Hello everyone, we are back with another Ren'Py tutorial today. This one is going to be a continuation of last week's video where I introduced Python dictionaries and kind of alluded to some things that some ways that you can use those in Ren'Py, and we are going to get into those today. So a couple of things before we get started. First of all, there are going to be a couple of prerequisites for this video. The first thing is that you should have a pretty good understanding of dictionaries, so be sure you check out last week's video if you haven't yet. I will link to that at the top of the screen, so be sure you watch that one and go through it before you try this one. The other thing is we're going to be using some OOP or object-oriented programming concepts such as classes and instances and methods and things like that. So if you aren't up on your OOP concepts, I've got you covered there as well. Check the link at the top of the screen now, and that will send you to my earlier video on OOP concepts. And we're going to be reusing a lot of those concepts. I am going to go over them again, but I'm going to go over them really quickly. So if you don't have a full understanding or if you need a better understanding, be sure to check those videos out. One more thing before we get started. I've had a couple of people reach out to me wanting to know different ways that you can support me and my channel. And honestly, the best thing that you can do at this point is just watch my videos all the way through, hit the like button, subscribe, and if you want to see anything in particular, leave me a comment. All of those things help me out in the algorithm. So right now, I just want to try to get my videos in front of as many eyes as possible. Those are the best ways to do that. So thank you very much. And let's go ahead and jump right in. So I have a very simple scene set up. This is the same project that I've been working on for my last few videos, but I've kind of slimmed it down a little bit. So I just have two character images defined, one background image. I think we're only going to use one of the characters today. And that is about it. I don't have my character defined yet because we are going to do that in just a minute. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create an actor class. And again, we covered this in my earlier OOP videos. So again, I'm going to go over it pretty quickly, but I am going to go back over the stuff and go ahead and do it from scratch. So the first thing that we're going to do is create an init Python block. The init means that this will run at initialization. So whenever you start your game up, this is going to be the first thing that runs. So it's going to happen at the very beginning before anything else goes. Python, that lets us know that this is going to be a pure Python block. So we aren't using Ren'Py code, but we're going to be using just plain old Python code in this whole section. Next, we are going to create an actor class. And we're going to create our initialization method, and we're going to give it a few different attributes to begin with. So remember, we always have to start with self, and that's so that whenever we create an instance of the class, the instance knows that it is referring to that particular instance of the class. That's why we always had to put in the self attribute. After that, we're going to put in character, and that's going to be our Ren'Py character, followed by name. And then this is the way we did it before. I'm going to go ahead and show you the way that we did it earlier. Then we're going to update it to use dictionaries. So we created our three attributes, which were athletics, academics, that's right, if I can spell, and affection, which we might not even use, but we'll throw it in there anyway. And then we have to define all of these variables. So self.c equals character. Self.name equals name, and so on, athletics, academics, and again, so when we create our class instance, we're going to pass all of these in, and so this is just letting it know that each one of these variables is going to be referring to these, but for that specific instance of the class. That's why I always had to put in self, so it knows that you're referring just to that one class. And then next, we're going to create a couple of methods. And if you remember, a method is a function that acts upon a class. So if you want to do something with that class, if you want to change it in some way, do something to it, have it do something, we do that with method functions. And so we're going to create two methods. We're going to do a raise stat method. And we're doing this one a little bit differently than we did last time, so I am going to go through this a little bit more slowly because I found a different way of doing things. So the way that I did it before is I had a method called like raise athletics or raise academics, I think is the way that I did it. So you had to basically have a different method for each one of those, or actually two methods, because you had to have one to raise it and one to lower it. But now we're just going to pass the stat in manually, which is going to make us do it a little bit differently, but I'll go ahead and show you how to do that. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to get the current value. So we're going to say we're going to say current value equals get attribute and then stat name. I'm going to go ahead and type this in real quick, and then I'll let you know why we're doing it this way. Set attribute, because this is a little, like I said, a little bit differently than we did it last time. Stat name, current value plus amount. And then we're going to create a notify, so it'll let us know on the screen that we're doing that. Ren'Py .notify. And then we're going to use an F string here. And again, I'm going to explain all this in just a moment. There we go. So what I wanted to do with this one is I wanted to be able to say in the dialogue your stat name. And so the way that we're having to do that is a little bit tricky. So I'm creating creating an attribute or a variable here called current value. And that's basically going to get the stat itself. And we're going to use a method that's built in. It's called the get attribute method, GETATTR. And this is going to get the name of the stat. So we can pull that out as a string, because otherwise, it took me a long time to figure this out when I was going through this earlier. But if you just use the stat itself, it won't give you the name of the stat. It'll give you the value. So I was trying to make it say athletics in dialogue, but it kept on giving me the value of athletics, which is like it'll say 7, instead of actually saying it. So that's why I'm doing it this way. Then after that, we are going to set the attribute by passing in the stat name and then what we want to change it to, which is going to be the current value plus whatever we set as the amount. And then we're just going to create a Ren'Py.notify. That's just going to create a little bubble on the screen that lets us know that we changed a stat, and it'll let us know what that is. So it's going to say stat name plus however much we added it. All right, next we are going to do lower stat, and we're going to do that in much the same way. So we're going to say self stat name and amount. Those are the values we're going to pass into it. And just like we did before, we're going to get the current value equals get attribute self stat name. And then we're going to set attribute. We're going to set the new value. This is going to be minus amount instead of plus amount, because we're now subtracting from the value. We're going to create another Ren'Py.notify F string, and we're going to say stat name minus amount. So that's what it's going to print in the notify statement whenever we change one of those. There we go. And that's pretty much all that we have to do. Now we've got our actor set, and we can create as many actors as we want, and they're going to have all of these same values on all of these same methods. So we only have to put them in once, and then just call the, and then just create an instance of the class. And we're going to do that like this. So we're out of our init Python block. We're back into regular Ren'Py. And so we're going to say define. We're going to create a character named Luna equals, and then we have to instantiate the class by calling it, kind of like we would call a function. So we're going to call actor, and then in there we're going to put all of our different, all of our attributes. So the first one is the character attribute, which is a Ren'Py attribute, and it's going to expect a name. So we're going to call that Luna. Then we're going to give it the actual name, which is the same. That's also going to be Luna. And then we're going to give it our 3 stats. We're going to give it our athletics, which will say 5, academics, which will be 7, and affection, which is going to start out as a 0. And that is pretty much all we have to do in the beginning. And then in order to use that, let me get rid of that say statement. So down here on our game, so whenever we call it, we have to do luna.c. Remember, because we're calling the Luna character self.c. And then we can put in whatever dialogue we want. Like we'll just say hi. And then after that, let's create a menu, and we'll say, and just so we can test everything, we'll say raise academics. Pass for now, and then lower academics. Pass for now. All right, and we're going to put in our actual code to do that. So to raise academics, and so now we're going to have to go back into Python. And if you remember, whenever you do a long block of Python, we use that Python block. And then if you do add init at the beginning, it runs into initialization. If you want to do just one line of Python, you can just put a $ in the beginning, and then it will interpret that one line as Python, which is what we're going to have to do. So we're going to say luna.raiseStat. And then we're going to pass the stat in as a string, which is going to be academics. And then the amount we're going to raise it by, we'll raise it by 2. And then we can choose to lower academics. So we're going to say luna.lowerStat academics. And we'll just lower it by 1. All right, let's go in and do a quick play test, and we will see what that looks like. Oops, I get my window dragged over there. There we go. All right, let's go to start. She says hi, and then we can either raise academics or lower academics. Let's raise it at first, and it immediately goes, oh, that's right, because I didn't put in anything after that. So it automatically exits the game. It goes to the return statement. So let's say luna.c. That's all. There we go, just so we have an extra screen to pause on. Let's try that one more time. Raise academics, and now there we go, we get the Ren'Py notify up there that lets us know that we just raised our academics by 2 points. And then we can do that again and say lower academics, and it lowers it by 1 point. Again, it lets us know up there. So yeah, pretty simple so far. And then I'm going to show you the extra thing real quick that I put in for this one. Actually, I'm going to save that for when we do the dictionary, because we're going to do it in kind of a weird way. All right, so that is the basic way to use a class in order to create a character. So now we're going to do something a little bit different. One thing that I don't like about this is we have to create a separate attribute for each one of our attributes. We have to create basically a different variable for each one of those, and we have to pass them all in separately. Which, might be a little bit unwieldy. It might be a little bit difficult if you want to extend it or do different things. So I'm going to take all of this, and I'm going to comment that out. And we're going to start over from scratch, create a new class, and we're going to do things a little bit differently using dictionaries. So first thing, I'm going to create a new init Python block, just like we did before. We're going to create a class called actor. We're going to create an initialization block, init, and this time our attributes are going, or our parameters are going to be self, character, name, and then stats. So all 3 of these stats we're going to put in one variable using a dictionary, and I'm going to show you how that works. So we're going to say self.c equals character. That remains the same. Oops. Self.name equals name. That also remains the same. And here's where it's going to deviate. We're going to say self.stats equals, and then we're going to put these curly brackets. Remember, that's how we declare a dictionary. And I like to do multi-line dictionaries. It just makes it a little bit more readable, at least while you're creating the variable. And we're going to create our 3 stats in here. So we're going to say athletics as a string, :0. And so remember, key value pairs is what we're doing. So the key is athletics as a string. The value is 0 as an integer or a number variable. Then you put a comma, letting you know you're going to the next item in the dictionary. Then we're going to say academics, also 0, and affection, also 0. And we're not going to put the comma. I believe if you put a trailing comma or a comma after the last item, it'll create a syntax error. So we do not do that. There we go. So one thing you might notice is that I have assigned specific numbers to all of these, and they are all 0. So right now I could go on and create the rest of the class as normal, But something weird will happen though. And again, I noticed this when I was preparing this earlier. When you create the character, we're going to pass these values in just like before, but these values that you create are going to override the ones that you put in there, and it's going to make everything be 0. Even if you put in different values when you define your character, it's going to initialize to 0 because this class is going to override it. So I found a way around that, which we're going to do right now. We're going to use a for loop. I believe I covered for loops in a previous video as well. If you want me to go in depth on that, leave me a comment below, and if there's enough interest, I'll do a video on it, but I'm just going to go through it kind of quickly for right now. And when we do a for loop in a dictionary, we can iterate over both the key and the value kind of at the same time. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to say for key value in stats dot items. There, and that basically just means that it's going to iterate over every item in this stats dictionary. So for key value in stats items, if key in self.stats, so that basically means that if that key exists in stats, then we are going to do something with that, and we are going to say self.stats key equals value. There we go. And that should, if it works correctly, I believe it will, that will initialize everything correctly according to the way that we're going to create our character in just a moment. So after that, we're going to create our methods in much the same way. They're going to be a little bit different, actually a little bit simpler. So we're going to create our raise stat method first. So we're going to say self stat name and amount, just like we did before. And then we're going to say self.stats. And remember, the way that we access a value is by key. So first, we're going to call the stats variable, which is a dictionary. And then we're going to call the specific stat that we want. And that's going to be stat name as passed through here. So if we call academics, then it's going to go to academics, and it's going to access that value. Oops, there we go. So stat name, and we're just going to say plus equals amount, then Ren'Py dot notify, create our f string, stat. I can't tell you how many times I've accidentally put in state name while I'm doing this. Seems like almost every time. And then amount. And that's it. So we actually saved ourselves like a line of code. Our code is a lot more, a little bit more concise than the way we had to do it before in order to call that stat by name. Then we're going to do the same thing with lower stat, self stat name, amount, self.stats, stat name minus equals amount, and then call Ren'Py.notify. And f string stat name minus amount. There we go, and that should be all that we have to do. And we're going to define our character in much the same way, but just a little bit different, as you might imagine. So we're going to say define Luna equals, we're going to call our actor class just like before. We're going to put in our name. Oops, sorry, I got to put in the character keyword first, followed by our name, then our name again. And here we're going to have to input this as a dictionary, and I couldn't figure out a better way to do this. There might be one, but this will work for now. But we are going to have to put in the full dictionary. So we're going to say athletics, score, what do we do that before? Is a 5? Yeah. Academics. And honestly, it might be a little bit safer to do it this way anyway, just to make sure you don't accidentally leave anything out. Affection 0, so it kind of forces you to spell everything out, which again might be a little bit better. There we go, and that's basically all we have to do. So now when I run that, it should work in much the same way. Let's try it out real quick, and we'll see how that does. Oops, let me Shift R to reload. There we go. And raise academics. There we go. Academics +2, and worked in exactly the same way. But I'm going to show you something else that we can do here real quick. So let's say instead of that's all, we're going to say what the new stat is. Now my academics attribute is... And if you want to put a variable into Ren'Py dialog, we put that in the square brackets. And so we're just going to call our dictionary. So we're going to call our Luna character. That is our instance that we're going to call. So Luna. And then we need to call the specific attribute, which is stats. That's the variable on that object that we want to call. And then to call the specific value that we want, we're going to call the key. And again, we're going to put that in square brackets. And we have to put in the string for the specific attribute that we want, which is academics. I know it gets a little bit tricky, but again, just try to read everything from the outside in. So luna.stats, academics, and then in both of your square brackets. Yeah, and that should be all we have to do. Let's check it out and see if that worked. Where'd my game go? I closed it. All right, let's go start. Raise academics. Now my academics is 9. So if you saw it, it was 7 when we instantiated it. And when we raised it 2 points, it went up to 9. And it should work the same way. I think that these values will persist. So when I lower it by 1, I think it'll go down to 8. Oh, it still says it's 9. Hang on a second. Let me restart that completely. Actually, let me make sure I did that correctly. Oh, no, I made an error there. I did minus plus instead of minus equals. So that's why that didn't work. All right, let's try that again. That's why you should always test your game, because that's something that wouldn't have come up with a linter. Like, that only came up by me realizing that something went wrong. All right, let's do that again. Now I think it reset back to 7. So if I do lower academics, it should lower it to 6. There we go, academics minus 1. And that worked flawlessly. So there we go. So you're probably starting to see kind of the utility in using dictionaries now. Basically, just makes your code a little bit cleaner in the long run by not having to put all of those attributes in as parameters. You still had to put all of them in when you use them as arguments down here. But again, it keeps our class a little bit cleaner, and it'll make it easier to extend also. If I want to add another attribute, then I just go add it down there. I will have to add it to my classes, but actually, I think if you add that one down there, let's try this real quick. I don't think it'll cause a syntax error if I try to put something in. Let me see. I didn't plan on doing this, so I'm just going to make this up off the top of my head. I'm just going to say, I don't know, speed. And let's say 0. Let's say that causes a syntax error when I run it. It did not create a syntax error. That is very interesting. So now let's see if I can call that stat. And it should automatically instantiate that to 0, or initialize that as 0. Let's see if that works. Yeah, it did. It automatically initialized it to 0. So that's another benefit of that, in that it will, you can add things to it, and you only have to declare the ones that you need, and it'll automatically, again, initialize the other ones to 0. That is pretty cool. I didn't even know that, but that does make sense, I guess. All right, so again, you're probably starting to see some other ways you can use this, like for inventory systems and things like that. You could make the key like the name of the item, and then the value, how many you have in your inventory. Or you could make an inventory item class where the key is the inventory item name, and then the value could be the description of the item. But then when you use it in your inventory, you can have your inventory be like, keys and values being, the name of the item and then how many you have in your inventory, or something like that. Or you could even have the key be the dictionary item. So your key could be its own key value pair, to where you could access the name, the description of the item, and how many you have in your inventory. If you would be interested in seeing how to use this in an inventory system, also be sure to leave me a comment, and I might look into doing that in the future. But I probably will be exploring more ways to use dictionaries pretty soon. I got a couple of other things that I want to do first, but I'm going to leave that open, though, if there's enough interest. That will just about do us today. Again, I hope this has been informative. If you got something out of this video, shoot me a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.